Most people completely misunderstand this idea. You probably think the modern world runs on software, right? The cloud, artificial intelligence. Well, it doesn't. This explainer is going to argue something that might totally shatter your worldview. Our entire digital reality is actually an illusion. It rests on a very fragile, incredibly concentrated physical foundation. And if you think tech is all about code, buckle up, because this is going to challenge everything you know.
Okay, let's dive right in. When we think of big tech today, our minds instantly conjure up social networks, apps, and software giants. We assume their supreme power comes from the digital realm. But here's the thing. Software is absolutely nothing without the physical hardware that processes it. And that hardware relies on a manufacturing supply chain so spectacularly precarious, it is actively re-rating global military security as we speak. To put this vulnerability into perspective, look at this number, 0. That is exactly how many advanced processors Apple actually manufactures for its own iPhones. 0. They make none of them. They buy memory chips from Japan, audio chips from Texas, and sure, they design the ultra-complex processor that runs the phone, but they cannot physically build it. Neither can Google or Amazon or even the US government. For all their wealth and power, they are entirely dependent on someone else's physical factories. And this brilliantly illustrates what we're actually talking about here, a semiconductor, or a chip. At its core, the entire digital universe consists of just two numbers, ones and zeros. But those numbers aren't abstract math magically floating in the ether. They are physical expressions of electrical currents. A chip is just a microscopic grid of tiny switches called transistors that flip those currents on and off. Every email you send, every video you stream, every missile guidance system deployed, it's literally just electrons moving across a tiny slab of silicon. So the absolutely crucial point here is how this physical reality shifts global power. Think about it. World War II was a conflict of industrial attrition, decided by which country could produce the most steel, aluminum, and oil. The Cold War was defined by atomic weapons. But the great power rivalry of the future, that is going to be determined by computing power. Today, military strategists recognize that all advanced capabilities require cutting-edge chips, and a terrifyingly tiny number of companies control their production. But here is the part almost everyone misses when they talk about global supply chains and the tech economy.
Reveal number 1, the ultimate choke point. We've all been sold this illusion that globalization created this highly diverse, robust, unbreakable web of trade. But the relentless demand for efficiency and lower costs actually created massive single points of failure. Back in the 1970s, the entire world panicked because OPEC controlled roughly 40% of the global oil supply. We saw that as a terrifying, world-altering monopoly. But today, over 90% of the world's most advanced processor chips come from one single place, Taiwan. Just imagine for a second if 90% of the world's energy supply was pumped from one small island. That's the reality of our computing power today. Take a look at the geographic reality of our digital world. Over a third of all the new computing power humanity uses each year is fabricated right here, primarily by one single company called TSMC. And they sit on an island that is prone to earthquakes and just so happens to be the center of the world's most dangerous geopolitical flashpoint. If these factories stop, the global economy stops. Your phone, automakers, telecom networks, the whole shebang just grinds to a halt. And trust me, it gets even crazier because as tight as that geographic choke point is, Taiwan's chip-making supremacy is actually dependent on an even more impossible technological monopoly. Reveal number 2, the Dutch monopoly. The rabbit hole of the semiconductor industry goes so much deeper. We know TSMC builds the chips, but ask yourself this. Who builds the machines that build the chips? You obviously can't carve nanometer-scale transistors with tweezers. You need equipment so advanced it honestly defies human comprehension. The answer is an extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography machine. One of these costs well over $100 million. And here's the jaw-dropping fact. Exactly one company in the entire world can make them, a Dutch company called ASML. They hold a literal 100% monopoly. Just to replicate the laser inside this machine requires perfectly assembling over 450,000 parts. Without this specific machine from this specific Dutch company, cutting-edge chips simply cannot exist. No way around it.
And the reason these machines are so irreplaceable is the sheer impossible scale they operate at. These machines are carving 3D transistors smaller than a single coronavirus. They're hundredths the size of a mitochondria. Just for the iPhone 12 alone, TSMC's factories fabricated well over 1 quintillion transistors in a matter of months. That is a 1 with 18 zeros behind it. We are literally mass-producing machinery on an atomic level.
Enter the trillion-dollar assault. Because when you control choke points this precise, commerce quickly turns into warfare. In 2020, the US government used its control over chip technology to effectively cut off the Chinese tech giant Huawei from the advanced semiconductors they desperately needed. And almost overnight, a seemingly unstoppable global tech titan faced technological asphyxiation. Entire product lines just died. It proved you don't need a naval blockade to cripple an adversary anymore. You just need a chip choke.
Which brings us to reveal number 3, the geopolitical stakes. The rest of the world isn't just sitting by while a few allies hold the keys to the digital kingdom. This monopoly is completely rewriting military power. Recognizing this fatal dependency, China's response has been massive, state-driven, and deeply militaristic. Consider this directive from Chinese leader Xi Jinping. We must assault the fortifications of core technology research. We must concentrate the most powerful forces to act together, compose shock brigades and special forces to storm the passes. China is now spending more money importing chips than they spend importing oil, and they are pouring billions into state subsidies to break free from foreign reliance. This shift perfectly outlines why both the US and China view this as an existential race. Traditional warfare was about who had the most conventional mass, right? Tanks, planes, steel. But future warfare? Military strategists now call it intelligentized warfare. It relies on AI, autonomous drone swarms, and dominating the invisible electromagnetic spectrum. You absolutely cannot win an intelligentized war if your adversary has faster, smaller, and more efficient chips than you do. The battle is bite for bite.
So what is the big takeaway from all of this? It's a complete shift in perspective. The future of global power isn't some abstract code. It isn't magically floating in the cloud. It is a highly contested, microscopically carved, incredibly fragile physical object. Our entire digital, economic, and military future rests on slabs of silicon that depend on a supply chain literally hanging by a thread. Which leaves us with one incredibly powerful, lingering question to reflect on. If the entire modern world, from our smartphones to our stock markets to our advanced weapon systems, ultimately relies on a single island in East Asia, what happens when someone decides to take it?